Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out the world's most powerful currency is just another currency. No explosions, no emergency alerts, no dramatic announcement. The grocery store still opens, planes still fly, stock markets still blink green and red. But underneath all of it, something critical has cracked. Because the US dollar doesn't just buy things, it holds the global economy together. And the uncomfortable question is this: if the dollar ever stops doing that, does the system survive? This matters right now, because for the first time in decades, people are openly asking whether dollar dominance is permanent, or just a long phase that feels permanent, until it isn't. Trade wars, sanctions, record debt, new payment systems, countries quietly making backup plans. None of this means collapse tomorrow, but it does mean pressure. So let's slow this down. No jargon, no hype. Just how the system actually works and what breaks if the dollar stops being the center of it. First, you need to understand a strange truth. Most global trade doesn't use local money. Oil isn't priced in Saudi riyals. Planes aren't sold in euros. Shipping contracts aren't settled in yen. They're priced in dollars. That means when Japan buys oil from the Middle East, it often has to get dollars first. When Brazil trades with China, dollars still sit in the middle, even when the US isn't involved. The dollar isn't just America's money. It's the default language of global trade. Why? Not because it's morally superior, not because the US is always responsible, but because for decades the dollar has been stable, liquid, and everywhere. You can get it anytime, you can sell it instantly, and there's always someone willing to take it. That convenience turned into dependence, and dependence turned into power. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because when the dollar is the world's reserve currency, the US gets to do something no other country can. It can borrow in its own money, forever. If Italy prints too much, panic ensues. If Argentina borrows too much, its currency collapses. If Turkey runs deficits, inflation explodes. But when the US does it, the world absorbs it. Treasury bonds don't just fund America, they park global savings. Central banks hold them. Pension funds rely on them. Markets treat them as risk-free, which is ironic because they're literally backed by debt. This creates a loop. The world needs dollars to trade. The world buys US debt to get dollars. The US issues more debt to supply dollars, and the system keeps spinning until confidence wobbles. Now, the dollar falling doesn't mean vanishing. It doesn't mean everyone suddenly refuses it. It means something quieter, less trust, less automatic demand, more alternatives. That's how reserve currencies actually lose power, slowly, then suddenly. So what happens first? Not chaos, costs. If fewer countries want to hold dollars, US borrowing becomes more expensive, higher interest rates, more pressure on budgets, harder political choices. For Americans, that shows up as higher prices and slower growth. For everyone else, it's worse, because global debt is mostly priced in dollars. When the dollar weakens or becomes unstable, that debt becomes harder to manage. Countries that borrowed in dollars suddenly owe more in real terms. Their currencies don't stretch as far. Defaults become tempting. This isn't theoretical. We've seen this movie before, just not with the dollar as the main character. When the British pound lost reserve status after World War II, it didn't crash overnight. It faded. Britain kept functioning, but its influence shrank. Its financial freedom narrowed, and it never fully recovered that privilege. Now here's the part people get wrong. A weaker dollar doesn't automatically mean a stronger global system. It can actually make things more fragile. Why? Because there is no clean replacement. The euro is large, but politically fragmented. China's currency is tightly controlled. Gold doesn't scale smoothly. Crypto doesn't absorb trillions smoothly. So instead of one trusted center, you get fragmentation, multiple currencies, multiple payment systems, more friction, more hedging, more uncertainty. Trade slows, risk rises, and when risk rises, capital freezes. That's how global slowdowns really begin, quietly. The irony is that everyone complains about dollar dominance while relying on it. Sanctioned countries hate it, allies resent it, markets depend on it. It's like a power grid everyone criticizes until it flickers. Then panic sets in. Now, does the global economy collapse if the dollar loses control? No, but it does mean survival looks different. Less efficiency, more volatility, higher transaction costs, frequent financial stress. Growth becomes harder, crises become more frequent, and power shifts, not cleanly, but messily. This is the part rarely said out loud. The dollar system isn't fair, but it is familiar, and systems don't need to be fair to function. They need to be trusted. Once trust erodes, everything costs more energy to maintain. More rules, more safeguards, more politics. Which brings us to the real question. Not will the dollar fall, but what replaces the silence it currently provides? Because right now, the dollar absorbs shock without asking permission. When markets panic, they run towards it. When crises hit, it becomes the escape hatch. Take that away, or even weaken it, and panic has nowhere clean to go. So the global economy probably survives, but it becomes louder, more fragile, more nervous. And survival doesn't mean prosperity, it just means continuity. Here's the unresolved part. If no single currency can replace the dollar, and no system wants to admit dependence on it, then what exactly is the endgame? A slow transition? A fractured financial map? Or a crisis that forces a new center? Because history doesn't remove dominant systems politely. It waits until confidence cracks. And the question isn't whether the dollar lasts forever. It's whether the world is ready for what comes after it stops being unquestioned. And if that moment arrives quietly, will we even recognize it when it happens?